We refused to surrender. We refused to fail.
The message arrived at 0400 hours, broadcast on every frequency humanity had ever used. It came from a fleet the size of a small moon, hanging silently in orbit above Earth, blotting out the stars with its shadow. The translation was simple, brutal, final. Surrender your world. Disarm your defenses. Kneel and you will be spared. Every government on the planet received the same ultimatum. Every military, every leader. They had exactly 1 hour to respond. Humanity's answer took less than a minute to write. Admiral Elena Cross stood in the command bunker beneath Colorado, staring at the alien fleet's silhouette on the tactical display. Ships beyond counting. Weapons beyond comprehension. A civilization calling itself the Critheri Dominion conquerors who had subjugated 43 worlds without losing a single battle. Her aide, a young officer barely out of training, looked up at her, pale. Admiral, their fleet alone outnumbers everything we have by 100 to 1. If we refuse. I know the math, Lieutenant, Cross said quietly. She keyed the comm. The response that went out to the Critheri flagship was 3 words long. We refused. No pleading. No negotiation. Just those 2 words, broadcast back on every channel they'd used to threaten an entire species. Aboard the Critheri flagship, Overlord Vexraton received the message with something close to amusement. They refuse, he said, turning to his advisors. A species with no jump drives, no plasma shielding, no orbital weapons platforms. They refuse us. His advisors laughed with him, all except one, an old strategist named Doskel, who had studied humanity's history quietly for months. Overlord, Doskel said carefully, the humans have never surrendered to anything in their recorded history. Not disease, not extinction-level asteroids, not each other. I would advise caution. Vexraton waved him off. Caution is for civilizations that have something to fear. Begin the bombardment in 1 hour as promised. Let their refusal be their epitaph. What the Critheri didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this exact moment for over a decade. Ever since a damaged Critheri scout ship crash-landed in the Pacific, giving Earth scientists their first glimpse of alien technology. In secret facilities beneath every continent, humanity had spent 10 years reverse engineering, adapting, improving. Not to become the Critheri. To become something the Critheri had never encountered. An enemy who fought like they had nothing left to lose, because in truth they didn't. Every fighter pilot, every engineer, every soldier had trained for a war they hoped would never come, armed with hybrid technology built from alien wreckage and human ingenuity, weapons designed specifically to exploit the one weakness Doskel had warned about but no one else believed. The Critheri had never fought an enemy that refused to break. They think this is a bombardment, General Marcus Webb said grimly, watching the fleet position itself in orbit. They don't know they just started a war they can't win. The Critheri opened fire exactly on schedule. Orbital strikes meant to level cities, break morale, force compliance within hours. But the strikes hit empty ground. Humanity's cities had been evacuated weeks in advance. The moment the fleet was first detected entering the system, populations moved underground, into hardened shelters built specifically for this scenario. The Critheri had bombed ghost towns. And while their fleet spent its opening barrage on empty streets, humanity's real defense rose from hidden silos across 6 continents. A coordinated launch of experimental interceptor drones, built from salvaged alien tech, controlled by AI systems trained on a decade of simulated warfare. The first wave caught the Critheri fleet completely by surprise. Overlord Vexraton watched in disbelief as a swarm of small, fast, aggressive fighters tore through his fleet's outer screen. Vessels his sensors had rated as primitive, now moving with tactics his own war college had never studied. Impossible, he snarled. Their technology is ours, Doskel said quietly. Or close enough. They've had 10 years to study the wreckage from the scout ship, Overlord. 10 years to prepare for exactly this. The human pilots fought with a ferocity the Critheri had never encountered in 43 conquests. These were not soldiers fighting for territory or glory. They were fighting for the only home their species had ever known, with absolutely nothing held back. Ship after Krithri ship fell to coordinated strikes, boarding actions, and sabotage from teams that had spent a decade planning for this single day. Admiral Cross authorized the final phase 3 hours into the battle. Earth's orbital defense platforms, kept dark and undetected until this exact moment, activated simultaneously, catching the remaining Krithri fleet in a crossfire from angles their sensors had never mapped. Vexraton's flagship took a direct hit that crippled its main reactor. Overlord, Doskel shouted over the chaos. We need to withdraw. We do not retreat from primitives. They are not primitives, Doskel said, his voice suddenly cold and certain. They are a species that has spent every moment of their history refusing to die quietly. We miscalculated the moment we called this a bombardment instead of what it actually was. What was it? Vexraton demanded. A declaration. And they answered it. By the 6th hour, the Krithri fleet, once numbering in the thousands, had been reduced to a scattered, retreating remnant. Humanity's forces, though battered and diminished, held their ground in the skies above their homeworld. Admiral Cross opened a final channel to the retreating Krithri flagship. You gave us 1 hour to surrender, she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in it. We're giving you considerably less to leave this system. And Overlord, tell your dominion, tell every world in your empire. Humanity does not kneel, not to disease, not to disaster, not to you. We refused once. We'll refuse again as many times as it takes. The remnants of the Krithri fleet jumped away in silence, carrying home the story of the one world that had ever answered their ultimatum with defiance instead of surrender and won. In the weeks that followed, humanity rebuilt. Cities were repaired. The dead were honored. And a message was recorded, broadcast into deep space on every frequency humanity possessed, aimed at every world that might one day consider testing them the way the Krithri had. It was short. It was final. And it became humanity's answer to every threat that would ever come after. We were given a choice. Surrender or fight for everything we are. We refused. We always will.